Hello, fellow investigators. Welcome back to our channel, Black Room Investigations. If you are new to the channel, please subscribe and follow along as we expose the darkest corners of human behavior through cinematic storytelling and rigorous investigation. On December 15th, 1999, Great Falls Police managed to get a search warrant for the most twisted person they were ever going to meet. Everything started to go haywire when they found a journal with codes. These were actually recipes with names like Little Boy Pot Pie, French Fried Kid, and Little Boy Stew. Police did not know if these recipes were reality or fantasy, but they sensed something very disturbing had been in motion right under their noses. What was happening in the kitchen of that unkempt house? How did police end up with the disturbing case of Nathaniel Bar-Jonah? 10-year-old Zachary Xerxes Ramsey, known as Zach, was a carefree and sociable child. His high spirits made him popular among his teachers, parents, and friends. He lived at 400 4th North Street and attended Whittier Elementary School. The friend group would normally meet up before the bell rang to run around and play together before class. Unfortunately, those blissful childhood mornings would soon come to a tragic end. It was a cold winter morning on Tuesday, February 6th, 1996. The morning chill of 7:30 a.m. had nothing on Zach and his friends. Zach wore a blue denim jacket with green sleeves, a blue football jersey with his NAS name imprinted on the back in gold letters, stone-washed jeans, and black high-top sneakers. The plan, as usual, was to gather outside school, play, and chat before the bell rang. In his excitement, he almost forgot his lunchbox at home. Following his usual routine, Zach set upon his walk to school. However, that day would be far from routine. Zach was well known in the Great Falls community. He never had anything to fear until that particular day. The streets were covered with snow, and he strolled along, kicking around a little ball of snow. He then entered an alley that made his route shorter, even though his school was only 6 blocks away. It was not known whether he noticed a man sitting in the off-white four-door sedan parked in the alley behind a house on the 400 block of 5th Avenue North. The engine idled quietly as the figure remained. Zach was a smart kid. It's safe to assume that had he found something suspicious, he would have changed his route. He was in an area which was well known to him, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. However, somewhere between where the alleyway cuts into 6th Street and comes out at 7th, Zach disappeared. His friends waiting for him thought that he must have been sick and stayed at home. In keeping with school policy, Zach's mother was called and notified of her son's absence. After looking for Zach with no success, his mother reported him missing. When the news reached the public, it became one of the biggest stories to ever hit the Great Falls community. A child having gone missing while en route to school shocked the public, who was not ready to believe the worst. In 1995 and 96, Montana was seeing one violent crime every 6 hours and 30 minutes on average. The truth was, they had no idea yet about the darkness that had befallen their otherwise peaceful and happy community. An immediate and massive search for little Zach was set upon in Great Falls. The news opened into the world quickly, and hundreds of volunteers, law enforcement officers, and rescue teams joined. The focus centered around the area of the 400 block of 4th Street North, where Zach was last seen. During the search, investigators discovered a pair of blue jeans and a blue denim jacket, which were believed to belong to Zach. The jeans were found in a dumpster near the alleyway where Zach disappeared, while the jacket was found in a nearby field. There were a number of interviews taken around the street Zach disappeared from. There were many witnesses who affirmed having seen a little boy with his attire. Others knew Zach by name and had seen him walking down to school that morning. These accounts became increasingly more disturbing. There was a witness who remembered seeing Zach in the alleyway. To him, he looked like he was waiting for someone. A more disturbing account was from a family of 3 who lived in an apartment in the alleyway. They reported seeing Zach in the alleyway that morning and also reported seeing an off-white 4-door car nearly run him over. Another witness who lived near the end of the alleyway reported seeing Zach crying with an upset, obese adult male following feet behind him at about 7:45 a.m. One person claimed to know the identity of the adult male following Zach. He saw this man in a navy blue police jacket taking out the trash. The witness also saw Zach turning into the alleyway while the man stood still behind the dumpster. He recognized this man to be Nathaniel Bar-Jonah, a man who had a disturbing crime record involving children. To get to Zach, they needed to know all about Nathaniel. Nathaniel was born on February 15, 1957, in Worcester, Massachusetts, as David Paul Brown to parents Philip Brown and Tyra Brown. He was the youngest of three children. As an infant, he seemed to be insatiable, always wanting more to eat. His muscles weren't fully developed, and being overweight had rendered him immobile. He also despised being touched. At merely 3 weeks old, he developed hydrocephalus, a condition in which extra fluid fills the brain cavities, pressuring the brain and causing brain damage. He did eventually recover from this condition. By the time he was 3, the Brown family decided to move to Lantana, Florida. This was where Nathaniel spent the initial few years of his life. His father, Philip, was a heavy equipment mechanic at a local construction firm. He was also a strict disciplinarian, and Nathaniel was not an easy child. To add to it, Nathaniel had siblings that he was not particularly close with. He developed a habit of stealing from them and other children. Philip saw this thievery as kleptomania, a mental health disorder that makes one want to steal. Also, somehow he felt the disorder had something to do with sexual orientation. He feared Nathaniel would grow up to be gay, because of which Philip would often discipline him with a thick leather belt. Whether it was the violence, the brain damage, or just how Nathaniel was born, he was turning out to be an extremely strange individual with some disturbing quirks. He was manifesting unpleasant psychological tendencies, like picking on his skin until it scabbed over and then chewing on the wound until it bled. He also didn't mind ingesting his own blood on occasion. The school found it to be a disturbing sight, and his classmates were horrified by him. His mother was regularly called by the school about this habit, but she neither had any explanation nor did she seem particularly disturbed by the strange, self soothing behavior. In 1964, a few months after moving back to Rochester, he lured a girl into his basement with the promise of showing her an Ouija board which he had received as a gift. He used the same Ouija board to choke her, but the little girl's screams were heard and Nathaniel's mother showed up before it was too late. The girl was released and the matter was never discussed again. Nathaniel was mentally going somewhere there was no coming back from. In 1973, a second incident took place. Nathaniel wore a police-like jacket and composed a note made out of words using cutouts of magazines in an attempt to entice two boys from Webster to a cemetery. He offered the boys $20 and a surprise. However, the boys refused because they found him odd-looking. The mother of the two boys declined to press charges against Nathaniel. She believed he needed psychiatric help rather than the criminal justice system. This was a decision that would later haunt everyone, as now, whenever Nathaniel would don a police jacket, a child somewhere was in imminent danger. In late March of 1975, Nathaniel, now 18 and on the verge of dropping out of high school, spotted a boy walking to school. Dressed in his infamous police uniform, Nathaniel abducted the boy named Richard O'Connor. Luckily, a neighbor spotted this abduction and informed the police. A patrol car later spotted the vehicle used in the abduction in a parking lot. Backup was called and Nathaniel was ordered to get out of the car. There in the car lay Richard O'Connor on the verge of death, bloodied and in critical condition. He had also defecated and urinated on himself. Nathaniel was arrested right then and there, but released on probation later. During that time, he traveled to nearby Hartford, Connecticut. There, he impersonated a police officer again and abducted a girl. The girl, however, began to convulse and vomit during the assault, after which Nathaniel threw her out of the car by the sidewalk. A witness noted his car plate number, which led to his arrest. One might believe that with these two arrests, Nathaniel's menace was finally coming to a conclusion. However, this case is unlike any other. Despite being arrested for this assault, the information about it never reached Nathaniel's probation officer. He was released from parole in May 1976 marking the end of his probationary period. This release was handed over to Nathaniel with a thank you letter for his cooperation. If these arrests did anything for Nathaniel, they left him more unhinged. On September 24th, 1977, he spotted two boys who were exiting the White City cinemas, laughing and having a good time in Shrewsbury, Massachusetts. Nathaniel was now claiming to be an undercover FBI agent. Somehow, he convinced these boys to enter his vehicle. He took the car to a secluded area where he handcuffed the boys and began assaulting them. Weighing 375 pounds, Nathaniel repeatedly jumped on the chest of one of the boys, only stopping when he thought he had killed him. After leaving the first boy on the side of the road, he drove off with the other boy still alive and in his trunk. However, the boy that was left behind came to consciousness and found help. Within an hour or so, Nathaniel was found, as was the boy in the trunk. For this crime, for the first time, Nathaniel was going to get a serious punishment. He received the maximum sentence of 18 to 20 years at the Massachusetts Correctional Institution, Concord. Now assigned to a prison psychologist, the current institution was found inadequate for Nathaniel. After engaging in conversations where he listed deranged sexual fantasies, he was then transferred to the Bridgewater State Hospital, which was a state operated treatment center for sexually dangerous offenders. He was to remain there for an indefinite term. On March 22, 1984, while still in prison, Nathaniel, whose legal name was David Brown, changed his name to Nathaniel Benjamin Levi Bar-Jonah. However, whether this name change would reflect a change in his face remained to be seen. He gave several explanations as to why he changed his name, one of these being that he wanted to know what it was like to be discriminated against and persecuted as a Jew. Later, he told someone that he was Jewish and he wanted his Jewish identity to reflect in his name. Although his ethnic ancestry was Scandinavian, and that name was all the Jewish connection he ever had. In that same year of 1984, Nathaniel won a parole hearing after two psychologists hired by the defense testified that he was no longer a threat to society. The state of Massachusetts failed to bring enough evidence or testimonies to prove that Nathaniel was, in fact, dangerous and thus ineligible to roam free. Therefore, on February 20, 1991, Superior Court Judge Walter Steele ordered his release. However, issues related to administration delayed this release until July of that year. Despite the testimony from the psychiatrist hired by the defense, his assigned psychiatrists were confident that he still fantasized about abducting, murdering, and eating children. One of the psychiatrists at Bridgewater was also informed by Nathaniel that his primary means of arousal came from violent thoughts of torture that had long existed within him. However, Nathaniel was released back into the world, and within a month it was clear all that had changed Nathaniel inside of the prison was his name. On August 9, 1991, outside of a post office in Oxford, Massachusetts, a boy sat alone in a car. Nathaniel saw an opportunity and entered the vehicle. Nathaniel, who was now 300 pounds after a stint in prison, sat on the boy's chest. As soon as the mother caught sight, she ran towards the car. This prompted Nathaniel to flee the scene, although he was recognized by law enforcement and arrested later. He confessed that he intended to kill him. In exchange for a guilty plea to assault and battery, the Worcester County District Attorney offered a 2-year probationary period. He was also ordered to move back to Great Falls, Montana, where his mother lived. Nathaniel was on the loose once again. Perhaps what was more astonishing was the fact that he was asked to move to Montana by Massachusetts officials as if it was a solution. However, for the next few years, Nathaniel seemed to slip under the radar until after Zach's disappearance. This case was assigned to Detective Bill Bellucci. He was given a list of sex offenders in the region which did not include Nathaniel. However, Detective Bellucci decided to ignore this list and keep his focus on Nathaniel as he was seen in the alleyway by several witnesses. Detective Bellucci requested multiple search warrants for the property where Nathaniel and his mother lived together, but they were all denied. Nathaniel, meanwhile, moved out of his mother's home. For the next 3 years, it became a cat and mouse game between him and Detective Bellucci. Despite Nathaniel's long criminal history, he managed to exploit loopholes within the legal system, evading appropriate consequences. However, Bellucci operated outside the conventional system, recognizing individual elements and identifying Nathaniel as an exceptional case. Although Nathaniel lacked a record of actual murder, he had come dangerously close to it on multiple occasions. On December 13th, 1999, Bellucci, who had kept a keen eye on Nathaniel, spotted him outside an elementary school for the third time in a week. For the last 3 years, Bellucci had believed that Nathaniel would strike again, and Bellucci was justified in his concern. During these visits to the local elementary school, Nathaniel wore a dark blue jacket and a knit cap and carried 2 cans of pepper spray, a toy gun, and a badge. Bellucci acted decisively, seizing the opportunity to charge Nathaniel with impersonating an officer and carrying a concealed weapon. On December 15th, 1999, a judge approved a search warrant for the objects used to impersonate officers at both Nathaniel's mother's home and his own. This was not a search warrant for violent crimes, but it was all Bellucci needed. While searching Nathaniel's home, police found items both expected and unexpected. There were items that aided Nathaniel in impersonating a law officer. A couple of coats, one dark blue and another with a toy badge in the pocket, a second toy badge, a stun gun, and a baseball cap reading security enforcement. However, the search took a dark turn when investigators discovered a pull string emerging from the ceiling of Nathaniel's kitchen. 2 albums were found with cutouts of children, as well as a document about knots and bondage, and an article entitled Autoerotic Asphyxia. With a little more scrutiny into Nathaniel's whereabouts, detectives discovered that he had not gone to work on February 6, 1996, the day of Zach's disappearance, nor the days leading up to it. On that day, his mother had accompanied his brother to another town to attend a funeral. However, her car, an off white four-door 1978 Toyota Corolla, remained with Nathaniel. Given the discoveries made, Bellucci was granted another search warrant within 2 days of the first one. During the second search in the house, amongst newspaper clippings from Zach's case, police found a strange list entitled Lake Webster with the names of 54 boys. They went all the way back to Nathaniel's first victims from Massachusetts, including the names of the 3 boys he assaulted in the 70s. The last entry was Zachary Ramsey, and it was followed by the word died. And it didn't stop there. 3,500 photographs of children and undeveloped film containing images of Nathaniel and 3 unidentified boys were also recovered. There were some journals with arbitrary characters that looked like some sort of coded writing. These were immediately taken in to be reviewed at a later date. Nathaniel's roommates were interviewed. One former roommate described having seen clothes that matched Zach's clothing that he was seen last in. He had also found some bloodied gloves. In a conversation with another roommate, Nathaniel mentioned Zachary Ramsey without much context. At one point, he even claimed that Zach would never be found because he had been dismembered and scattered across different locations. A month later, the code in the journal found at Nathaniel's home was cracked. It was a cookbook, but the recipe's names indicated Nathaniel's worst fantasies had already taken shape. The titles of the dishes had a disturbing pattern with names like Little Boy Pot Pie, French Fried Kid, and Little Boy Stew. Finally, police found a large, stained section of plywood in Nathaniel's garage, which was scrubbed with bleach and also struck several times with a meat cleaver as if it had been used as a cutting board. A luminol test in the room revealed that the word TAA had once been written on the floor in blood. This was tentatively linked to James Starr, a boy who was found raped and strangled in Ridge, New Hampshire in 1973. It was learned that in the days after Zach's disappearance, Nathaniel had cookouts for his neighbors in which he served deer burgers that tasted strange. Nathaniel claimed that he hunted, killed, butchered, and wrapped the meat personally. However, Nathaniel didn't own a gun or a hunting license, and credit card records suggested that he stopped buying food for a month after Zach disappeared. Finally, what looked to be human hair was found inside his meat grinder. An excavation at a former residence uncovered 21 bone fragments belonging to a boy between 8 and 13 years old. The house's pipes couldn't be examined because they had been replaced due to constant clogging issues. DNA from the hair and bones belonged to 2 different African American males, neither of whom was Zach. Those bones have never been identified. Almost all of his life, Nathaniel had hunted like it was a leisurely activity. But when it came to legal proceedings in trial, it came down to just three children. Zach's case had caused the most uproar, and it could have been the catalyst that brought Nathaniel down. However, Zach's mother refused to believe that her son was dead. Was it denial stemming from the inconceivable pain associated with the emerging truth, or perhaps encouragement from the defense team? The world would never come to know that. Her refusal, however, hindered any closure to Zach's case. She didn't believe Nathaniel was in any way related to Zach's disappearance because a psychic convinced her that Zach was living in Italy. In fact, she threatened to defend Nathaniel if he was brought to trial for her son's murder. Eventually, the charges related to Zach's disappearance had to be dropped due to lack of evidence. Police and prosecutors who had worked hard in recent years to nab Nathaniel had only one option: to focus on other possible victims and to do it quickly. Two names in the list found at Nathaniel's home belonged to the boys who lived in the same apartment building as him. These boys also appeared on film that had been seized from Nathaniel's home. One of the boys confirmed that Nathaniel invited them to a sleepover and then molested them, but the other boy visited Nathaniel in jail and wrote to him saying that he was his friend and that he never harmed him. This predator and sexual deviant was almost in the folds of the judicial system, and everyone would be able to see him for exactly who he was. But once again, the case was falling through the cracks of legality. 36 years old, Mary Patron, who was just a girl when she was assaulted by Nathaniel, recognized him in a blink. However, the statute of limitations had expired and Nathaniel couldn't be charged with this offense. Despite numerous failures by the judicial system in the past, Nathaniel was subsequently sentenced to 130 years in prison without the possibility of parole on the charges of kidnapping, aggravated assault, and sexual assault of various children. In 2008, Nathaniel was found unconscious in his prison cell due to a heart attack. He had been in poor health for some time, and on this day, he was pronounced dead. He took many horrifying secrets to the grave. Nathaniel's case can be attributed to a number of factors, including inadequate communication and information sharing. For instance, his probation officer didn't know of his other crime in 1977. In 1999, one would expect the process might have changed. However, a Montana court was not aware of Nathaniel's crime in Massachusetts. The system failed to understand Nathaniel's pattern of behavior and thus failed to handle the situation. This lack of awareness directly led to the atrocious abuse of many children over the span of decades. Despite the objections of Zach's mother, a judge declared Zachary Ramsey legally dead in 2011. Nathaniel was a predator and possibly even a cannibal, yet he was allowed to walk free again and again and again. The fact that he served 11 years in a mental institution and assaulted again within a month of release was overlooked. The death of Nathaniel Bar-Jonah in 2008 closed a chapter, but it did not provide a conclusion. He left behind a legacy of shattered lives, unidentified remains, and a mother still waiting for a son who hasn't been seen in nearly 30 years. It forces us to look at the world around us and ask, have we truly fixed the cracks that let a man like Bar-Jonah slip through so many times? Are our modern systems, for all their technology, actually equipped to catch a monster before he strikes? Or are we still just reacting to the horrors they leave behind? We want to hear your thoughts on these in the comments. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Stay aware, stay safe, and follow Black Room Investigations for more such chilling cases from across the world. Until next time, take care.